Hello, this is FPzero, and welcome to a bonus video for Pete and Amy's LP of The Witness. I'll be showing off some of the more well-hidden environmental puzzles and audio logs that were missed throughout the LP proper. So the first one is right at the start of the game, actually. You can just sort of walk up this path here, and suddenly, if you look up, everything becomes clear. When I saw this one myself, I realized just how well these things would be hidden. Because I've already beaten this game in full, completing one of these puzzles will not actually result in the light effects going off and flying towards one of those obelisks. So next, up on the wall, you can actually see there is an audio log hidden by the light tube that leads to the secret ending of the game. It's easier to access from the other staircase on the other side. And then in the last episode, Pete noticed that this path here definitely looked like a puzzle. And, well, it is. There are a number of environmental puzzles in this starting area, but I'm only going to show off a couple of them, because I don't want to show everything. Plus, there's a puzzle here that should definitely be discovered on your own if you are playing by yourself. The hint for it was on screen as we looked at that audio log. But yeah, while you're up here, you can also line up your vision and get one of these right here. Outside of the starting area, we're going to quickly jump over to the reflection puzzles in this boat dock. Getting up on the roof here allows us to see a puzzle using those colored vases, I guess, as a start point. And to discover this sort of thing is just, you really just have to be looking carefully, looking more for the end points sometimes than the start points, and then trying to figure out where you can possibly stand in order to actually line up your vision. Because that doesn't look like a start point from this view, but that does look like an end point. Early on in the LP, I remember Pete and Amy looking and trying to figure out if this was an environmental puzzle of some kind, because it certainly looks like it. It's a big, dark circle. But from up close, you can't really find anything with it. But heading over to the Reflection Island, you can start to piece some things together. So that solves that one, but if you look carefully, doesn't the reflection also look like a puzzle, possibly? If we take a quick trip down to the lower parts of this island, you can see that it's once more starting to line up. Can't get it from that middle side, but if we go down to the very bottom, the puzzle does come into view. And I kind of found it really fun with the game that an environmental puzzle might have more than one puzzle in it, essentially. So the reflection and the non-reflection both were separate puzzles. When you complete an obelisk, when you find all the environmental puzzles, it turns white. That's why it's white right now. But here I'm just showing off how the obelisk works. Essentially, those three puzzles we solved in the boat dock are on that side of the obelisk, and that side faces the dock. So, for example, this one is the only puzzle in this direction. So if you turn 180 degrees from the side you're looking at and travel in that direction, eventually you should come across a puzzle. And in this instance, there's a strangely shaped sand dune right here. When I discovered this the first time that I was playing, I immediately exclaimed to my friend, "How did I see that? How did I see that?" And that's basically a running theme with most of these environmental puzzles, is how did I see that? Like, for instance, this one's not so bad because you can see a half circle as you come up the stairs. But still, the idea of matching the perspective just perfectly to actually get one of these puzzles is just... I found it to be really compelling, essentially. There's a good reason I went and I actually tried to find all these environmental puzzles. Mostly because that quick aha moment when you've noticed something, like this one coming up right here, is just... it was immensely rewarding to me, and it was one of my favorite parts of this game, to be honest. The first time I came across one, I came across a puzzle that I couldn't complete for a long time because it required the boat. But knowing that those sorts of puzzles were in the game alongside the normal puzzle boards really kept me interested. So we're going to quickly jump over to the inside of the pyramid, back to the dreaded water puzzles. And this puzzle is one that Pete was trying to figure out at one point, because he noticed that oval shape on the wall right there. And he was trying to figure out how it could be a puzzle. And as it turns out, you have to catch the starting circle as the water is being lowered, because if it lowers too far, it no longer it takes the shape of a circle. And that's one major thing with the environmental puzzles in this game. The start point only has to be a start point for as long as it takes for you to actually essentially start the puzzle. It can become a different shape after you begin using it, or get obscured in some other way. Anyway, speaking of obscure environmental puzzles, it was discovered at one point that there is an environmental puzzle in the video with the guy walking across the... it's not a lake, but the part with the candle. And so they were wondering how many more puzzles are hidden in these videos. Well, there are a couple in the first one alone. And the hints are the colors of the exterior parts of the theater here. The ones I circled a moment ago. So scanning through, trying to find anything that looks circle-shaped,
Things like that.
you have to essentially line it up and time it with the puzzle. Or with the video on screen. These are a little bit more lenient, thankfully. But yeah, that's one. And then right there is number 2. So that first video has 2 puzzles in it, but it actually has a third one that you can't get to until you go all the way through the secret caves area and come back out up here. So I'm going to real quickly start the puzzle, or start the video, and race away. So these puzzles, or the videos, keep going while you are still just wandering around in the world, which allows you to get to specific places to get their environmental puzzles from different angles. In this case, it is a puzzle that's only visible from up here on this above walkway. As you can see, there's kind of a weird part of a circle there, and this line of leaves. So, if you just hang out at this point and wait a little bit for him to pull up his art books again, then we can get another one. There are, I believe, 3 puzzles in this video, 1 in the video with the candle, and 1 in video 6, which is has been mentioned to be an hour long and essentially just an audio podcast. the video at least was, in my opinion, pretty interesting to listen to, but it was a long one. Going outside, it was remarked that the windmill was never interacted with. I think the windmill has about 3 puzzles in it. One for each of the endpoints that you can see on the blades. And it's just a matter of trying to move your cursor along one of the exterior parts. It's kind of slow, but 3 puzzles to be found there nonetheless. And then I think here in the town, one puzzle was found using the black walls as the line. But there's actually 2, depending on which tower you're sitting on top of. If you're sitting on the one in the center of town, you can get one of them, but if you're sitting up here in the bell tower, you can get the other. All a matter of perspective. Then back here, we have the first environmental puzzle that the 2 of them spotted. It was this one that you need to change the room to red for. But there's actually a second puzzle hidden on this colored wall that's not as easily noticed. And in fact, it's a little tricky to actually find the start point for it. It's close to the tree. But changing it to green will allow you to complete this one too. There is nothing for the blue, and there is no way to turn that room yellow and get another one. But more hidden puzzles. Down by the lake that leads to the quarry, there's a couple more hidden using the reflection of the water. You can kind of see a start point right there, but if you start it like that, you don't actually complete the puzzle. It just requires you to get a little bit closer, and you can see it extends further into the water. Using the reflection of water, like we did at the boat dock, near reflection puzzles, also helps us here, because there turns out to be 2 different puzzles right here. I believe they were probably some of the last ones I found, just because I could not find for the life of me where they were. Inside the quarry, I believe it was mentioned, or at least noticed, that there should probably definitely be a puzzle there with that circular line. And as it turns out, if you come up to this angle, you can actually use the light from outside to fill in the hole that's created from the shadow, or the gap above. This is another one of those puzzles where you have to kind of have a moving component going on. And so you just want to catch the elevator as it goes up, and then when it reaches the top, you can actually reach the end point up on the right there. And there are 2 puzzles here, one for the angled ramp and one for this lift elevator. Up on the roof of the quarry, just looking off in specific angles, you can actually see this one right here. And it's kind of hard to notice from down below, because getting the angle from down below is impossible, even though there are a couple places where it looks like you should be able to get it. And then once again, over here, just the way that the light and shadow falls forms another one. There's also a triangular panel puzzle down here as well, just one of those ones that hangs out, separated out from all the rest. It was touched upon that there's a ton of boat puzzles. I would say there's a good probably dozen or so. Most of them are around the ship. The whole sunken ship thing, because you can get a couple of them by going in the ship, by going around the ship, looking at the ship from underneath while you're going through it. But this is probably the longest one in the game. And honestly, I think kind of the neatest one, the one that most exemplifies the whole moving frame of reference when it comes to using these environmental puzzles. And going at it at full speed is actually not a good idea because there's some very quick triggers that you need to do. Or quick changes, I should say. But basically following this green line all the way around the ship will get you another puzzle. It's a pretty long one though. It probably takes about a minute and a half at this speed, so I went ahead and chopped it out. But you can see transferring from one part of the ship to another on a green path eventually gets you all the way around the ship and to the endpoint. Be quick about it, and don't take it at speed 1, it's way too slow. Coming into dock here, it took me the longest time, but I eventually noticed there seems to be something weird with the this buoy here. So when I got out and take a better look at it, I realized as it turns there is a hidden line. And looking down under the boat, there's actually a start point. So not only do you have to use the movement in the boat as a method for finding some of these environmental puzzles, sometimes you have to use, literally, the boat itself. I can think of 3 or 4 puzzles where you have to use the boat. This isn't an environmental puzzle, but somebody mentioned the lady in the lake with the reflection, and you can see her face, her hair, her hands and arms, and then down to her legs there. It's a neat little reflection trick, and I think it's pretty appreciated. I had to have somebody else tell me that it was actually there, because I didn't see it the first time. Going into the mangrove jungle, there's some obvious ones here. That one just requires you to be in the right position. This one also just requires you to move your camera around. But this third one cannot be done from the ground itself. You actually have to get to a viewpoint above. And if you haven't figured out how to turn the platforms yet, you're not going to be able to figure it out because you need to turn the platforms so you can get onto that charred tree. But not only that, the orange platforms actually have some paint on the bottom, and that right there looked like an endpoint. As it turns out, and this is another tricky one to actually find the start for, even though it gives you the hint multiple times, you can use that start there to actually complete another environmental puzzle, assuming you have the tracks lined up. I don't, and it was going to take too much time to go and reset them, but if you set the puzzle up properly, you can get yourself to end on that point. Going in front of the castle are these flowers in the field, and I discovered one of these on accident the first time I played. And I just love how this one is totally reliant on your perspective. If you just happen to be walking in the right way, you'll notice it. If you don't, or if you're not, you won't. This was the first one I discovered here. There's only 2 in this field. The blue flowers don't actually have one. But it took me a long time to find the purple one after that, even though I knew there probably was one that I was just missing. As for the castle itself, the castle doesn't really have too many puzzles in it. I think the main ones were actually found during the LP itself. Though you can get a puzzle for every one of those puzzles where you have to, like, stand on the platforms and lower them, like walk the pattern. Anyway, this is at the temple where you have to use your surroundings to carve out a path. Having the gates open to this side actually allow you to use the painted plants and leaves out there mixed in with the cutouts from inside the building to make a few puzzles. So you get one there. This one, the start point is a little obscured, but if you line up the paint, again, you'll find that one. And then the third one, same thing, you have to line it up, but this one also requires that the shutter be closing as you do the puzzle, because there's a gap that can't be overcome unless you close the shutters and use the paint that's on there in order to solve it. I missed it here because I accidentally moved the mouse and it caused the puzzle to cancel out, but you get the idea. You just cross over that bit there and go and complete the puzzle like so. Outside, I believe while Amy was solving some other puzzles, Pete discovered that there was a ton of different ways you can solve this one up at the top. I think it's like 7 or 8 puzzles. And I really liked finding all those. This southern tip of the island is a part that that was not actually seen in the LP. However, it does not actually have any puzzles on it. There's one or two audio logs that you can discover here, but other than that, it's just here. There's actually nothing to do, no environmental puzzles. So I'm not sure what its purpose is, because this game is, for lack of a better term, it's very purposeful. I felt like as I was playing, everything that was being presented to me was done on purpose. And, even the shapes of scenery we've seen is purposefully shaped in order to possibly hide an environmental puzzle. All this stuff with perspective. But this area, as far as I can tell, doesn't actually have any purpose related to puzzles or environment other than this guy reaching for this chalice. In fact, not realizing his shadow has already gotten it. I don't know. I don't know what the purpose of this little segment is, because it's not required to visit for any reason, as we saw with the LP. So, anybody's got any ideas about that? Let me know, I guess. Anyway, going into the jungle, this took a while to discover on my own, but if you just happen to be looking in and looking forward, you'll discover there is actually a puzzle here in the trees. That's a bit of a theme, actually, in this jungle. We'll see another one like that in a moment or two. This was just a quick look at the totem here. And there's actually another puzzle hidden on the steps of the temple. And this one took forever for me to find out, because I was looking for another one like what the circle at the top of the temple was. And this was the only one that I couldn't find on this pillar for a very long time. Going back into the jungle, there are some lines on this tree, and I immediately became suspicious of them on my first playthrough. And as it turns out, you can get to a point where you just line it up here, and there you go. You got another puzzle. This tree actually has a couple of them. I think just 2. But I always thought it was pretty funny how the same half of a start point actually is used for 2 different puzzles here, just depending on how you happen to be looking at it. Something about that just really clicked with me, and I loved finding these things as I played. I didn't love the sound puzzles that much, though. Those weren't very fun. I had a lot of trouble with the wolf howling sound puzzle. For whatever reason, I came back to it a bunch of times. Anyway, in the bamboo forest, you can find more puzzles in the sky, using the foliage above to trace out your path properly. And this one actually counts for 2, depending on how you look at it. Back on the other side of the bamboo forest, near the entrance to the temple's little rock garden, you can find another one right here. And there are 2 hidden in this rock garden. I could only find one, or at least remember how to get one. But you can see briefly for a moment when I do find the start point, you can see where the end point is for the second one on the left there. Now I don't remember where I have to stand to get that one. I spent a good couple minutes trying to figure it out before giving up. This is one of the paths back into the caves, secret caves area. And it remains locked, though you can discover it early on. It remains locked for a long time. But that bit there kind of looks like an end point. And so I started looking around, trying to find where it would begin, and well, you can pretty much see there's definitely a start point there. It's just a matter of finding the shape and where to stand. So as it turns out, if you get yourself over towards where that rotating pillar is, you can get this end point. There's not too many puzzles in the caves themselves, but down by the challenge, if you're going through, you can see this little circular pool of water. And it turns out to be one of the more obvious puzzles in this game. But it's still nice nonetheless. We're getting close to the end here, but there are still a few on the way up to the top of the mountain. If you take a look over here, as you're climbing up, you'll see this brown puzzle right here done in the plants. And then also as you're walking here, you'll see an obvious start point, but getting the puzzle, you actually have to very carefully align yourself with the rocks and the ocean there. I think that one's probably one of my favorite ones, just because how many perspectives you have to get in place proper in order to get it. We didn't really go into the swamp here, into the color swamp, because as it turns out, most of the puzzles there were either found during the LP or involve the rotating platforms, the moving platforms, and sunlight tricks, and those aren't very exciting. Nor were they very hidden. It's more like you know that they're there, and it's just a matter of doing them. But even the top of the mountain has a few tricks of its own, a few hidden puzzles. Looking up to the top, you can see a circle there, and getting yourself into the right perspective will actually get you not one, but 2 puzzles. So that's it for the white half of that circle, but what about the dark half? Well, as it turns out, this one also has a hidden puzzle, though you have to get in a weirder perspective for that one. Just carefully walking around and looking up, and eventually it comes into view. Inside the mountain proper, in the whole final challenges, getting down to the second floor layer where the puzzle was done took like 128 times speed up. You can actually look above and do a puzzle on the path that you created on the first floor. Or the third floor, I don't know what you want to call it. But by that logic, you can also do it from down at the very bottom on those ones there. The blue one's easy to get, but this yellow one doesn't count. it only counts as an endpoint when you get to the top part there, where the blue one currently is. So to solve that one, you actually have to find a way to get it over to that endpoint where the blue is, and then get yourself down below. And doing that is a lot harder than you might think. Anyway, that's all I've got for a bunch of hidden environmental puzzles and little secrets here in The Witness. I love this game. I think it's a great game. And I'm really glad that this LP happened, because I think it was a great way to show off the game, and seeing people discover the puzzles on their own for the first time was really cool, and seeing the thread doing all their interaction trying to figure out what the mechanics were and the way things were hidden. So, I've been FPzero. Thank you for watching this video on these secret environmental puzzles, and thank you, Pete and Amy, for this LP. I really enjoyed it.